It is 1636, the 17th century, and imagine a world where at night the only light is one that you can carry in your hand, a flickering flame, or perhaps the moon and distant stars. Where the only thing standing between you and evil is the church, is faith, or perhaps, if you're very unlucky, the brave men and women of the King's Guard. In the night, there are strange and supernatural things fueled by the fury of the devil against the living. A time when at night and the only light by which to see is also the light by which they hunt, seeking your blood and soul. Over the years, I've made 1 or 2 videos about a role-playing system called Ubiquity. Some people have been kind enough to listen, some people have been even more kind and have experimented with the game. Quite a few people, even more people are getting involved in it right now, choosing the Ubiquity game that suits them and their group. Now, when I first discovered Ubiquity, the game that really got me excited about it was this one, All for One Regime Diabolique. It's by Triple Ace Games, and it's supernatural, sort of swashbuckling, very investigative, maybe, musketeer, definitely, horror. Some combination of those things as suits you and your group. There's sword fighting, there's chases, there's escapes, there's rivalries, there's supernatural creatures that go bump in the night and sometimes do more than bump. They rip, tear, rend, and shred. There's demonic possession, and there's magic, freeform magic. So this game had everything as far as I was concerned. Now, it took a little bit of doing, juggling schedules and personal lives and other games, but some of the people who were kind enough to listen to what I had to say about All for One went out and got the game themselves, and then we decided one way or another that why don't we play it together? In fact, let's play a sort of round-robin series of events, kind of a linked campaign with each person taking on the duties of Game Master. I was lucky enough to get to go first, kind of to set the tone of the adventure, which also lets me play 3 times in a row, which I think is awesome. Because I almost never get to play Ubiquity, although right now is a great time for me because I'm playing in a Leagues of Gothic Horror campaign, and we're doing this, my very favorite Ubiquity game. So, this is recap 1. Now, usually I wait until more has happened before I do a recap, but because we're going to be sharing Game Master's duties, and because we had so much fun, and because we wanted to do it live but couldn't, and then we wanted to record the audio, but there were problems caused by me, here we are doing some recaps. It's also a way for us a little bit to experiment and investigate something. All 4 of us were present, all 4 of us were playing the same game, but maybe our experience of the game was somehow different. Maybe our memory of different parts of the game are different, and that's always fun. Maybe our thoughts and feelings about the system, maybe that revelation in a recap will help us explore the system and understand it better and be able to share it better in the future for all these things. So this is recap 1. Now we've got 3 characters present. This is a time period when the 3 musketeers and their famous companion D'Artagnan are still very much alive. They've risen in authority within the musketeers. They're not resting, but they enjoy the benefit of their past successes, their most famous adventure in actually saving all of France and the Queen. And so these brave men, they have recently been injured. But a young man under their tutelage has vanished. He had been entrusted with a very important message, which he had to take to a small town a day's ride away. Well, he never arrived. The message was never delivered. And the only thing that is known is that he was going to go to confession first. This mission is entrusted to our musketeers because Athos, Porthos, Aramis, and D'Artagnan are in no shape to undertake either the investigation because of their pain, distraction, and general grumpiness, and because of the grievous injuries they've suffered on behalf of the king, crown, and country. It's up to our musketeers to protect them and to seek out, find, and perhaps rescue the missing young musketeer. That's the setup for the first session. Just a simple mission. The idea would be that we would each run a one-shot. Well, my one-shot, because of our technical difficulties, has now become 2 episodes. We're still waiting for the second episode, so we don't know how it ends. We don't know who lives and who dies, who woos. Well, actually we do know who woos, and that's how the session opened. Just before we were ready to start the session, I talked to Francois, JDRD30. Check out his channel to see what he's all about. I asked him, he had created a character who's very charming, very charismatic, strong force of personality, and very entranced with the ladies. So I asked him if it would be okay if the session started with him kind of in a situation with some ladies. He was like, sure, that sounds fine. I just wanted to verify what kind of womanizer, what kind of romancer he was. So I didn't want to misrepresent his initial stage of the character. I wanted to be able to build from it. So I checked with him if opening on that scene was okay, said it was okay. And so I opened the story on the streets of Paris. We described the classic 17th century understanding of Paris. And 2 of the characters are looking up at a window, and they know that inside is Brise-Cœur, Francois' character, his charming, womanizing, lady killer character. Unfortunately, this house at which they are looking is also the house of one of the captains in the Cardinal's Guard. Now, the Cardinal's Guard is the great rival to the King's Guard, who are the Musketeers. Now, the Musketeers are the most elite, the most excellent, the best dressed soldiers in all the land, if you believe the press. And of course, the Cardinal's Guard, well, that's what they think they are also, and they're certainly trying to be. So Brise-Cœur ended up in the arms of a lady who happened to be married to a captain of a rival guard company. So Jean-Marie and Philippe are outside trying to rouse him because they know they need to report to Monsieur de Tréville, who is the leader, the civilian leader of the Musketeers, the patron. They've got to go and find out what they're supposed to do. But here he is, and the morning is getting older, and he's still sacked out with his conquest of the night before. So the window opens, the head comes out kind of thing, and there's some banter. There's a guy selling baguettes on the street, and things are happening. But as Jean-Marie is buying himself a baguette, the husband and some Cardinal's guards are walking up the street, obviously coming home after working the night shift protecting the Cardinal. Now, Jean-Marie, he's the oldest of our current trio. My character will be joining later after my GM duties are over. And Jean-Marie is, if nothing else, a monster hunter. He joined the Musketeers to kill monsters. One in particular, and it has been a challenge to seek it out and kill it. He's becoming versed in the occult, but none of this seems to have damaged his sense of humor. Played by Nolinquisitor, Sébastien Allard, he has a wry wit, And the intersection of seriousness, the intersection of desire for action, the ability to describe, all of these things are what pretty much, to my mind, instantly made this group gel. So we've got Francois, the womanizer. We have Nolinquisitor, the grizzled monster hunter. And in between them, the young one, played by Ivan Mike, 1968, played by Ivan, we have Philippe. So Brise-Coeur, Jean-Marie, and Philippe. So Philippe and Jean-Marie are outside. They've got warm bread. They are recognizing that their friend is potentially in trouble and like, hurry up, come on, he's coming home. So Brise-Coeur makes his quick escape out the back of the house. He's obviously been there before. He knows about the back of the house. And he comes out. He's got his fancy musketeer's cloak and his hat and his breeches and his sword and everything, but no shirt. So there he is in all his glory, bare-chested, shirt in hand, and he's greeting his friends. And then, who is this guy in this, crimson cloak? Oh, so one of the Cardinals guards just ignores him. He's just going to walk right by him, and he and his friends would leave. But the scene is getting tense because Henri, the captain among the Cardinals guards, he's getting upset. He's getting upset with Jean-Marie, and the two of them are getting ready to fight. Philippe is kind of standing between them, but kind of egging them on a little bit, see what will happen. And so in comes Brise-Coeur, and so now there's a third musketeer entering the scene. They're all standing around his house. And this guy's not wearing his shirt. So like, where is your shirt? Says Henri. And at that moment, at that unfortunate moment, there's a woman's voice from the window above which said, Brise-Coeur, that's my husband's shirt. Your shirt is here. Well, now it's cinched, and all of his ire is directed at Brise-Coeur, at Francois' character. And it's like, what were you doing in my house? Francois decides, again, he's going to talk his way out of it. After all, he's playing, the devil-may-care kind of charming womanizer. And he's like, Brise-Coeur, I do not know this Brise-Coeur in your house. Is this your house? It's a very nice house. And he kind of makes it out that whatever is going on here, he has nothing to do with it. And the guard captain knows that some musketeers, at least, have to be involved based on the kind of mocking and teasing attitude of Jean-Marie and Philippe, but it's not this guy. This guy's all right. And so he charges into his house, and as our three musketeers make their way away from the scene, they can hear the sound of arguing begin and dishes breaking and whatnot, and it's just another kind of normal morning in Paris. So, as they're making their way down the street, Brise-Coeur is putting on his shirt, and we get the first of many funny lines about wearing another man's shirt. And this continues, and I hope it will continue in the second session. We'll see. But they're met by a young page who advises them they need to report to their patron, Monsieur de Treville. They need to cross the bridge, go over to where the headquarters is for a large mansion, which in those cases is called a hotel. So they have to go to that place on the other side of the Seine and report for a secretive mission. They can't tell anyone, particularly the very, very famous but currently very, very injured Athos, Porthos, Aramis, and D'Artagnan, because their patron wants what he's going to have them do kept secret, and it must be done in great haste. So off they go. One thing a musketeer is very loyal to their patron. So when they get to the headquarters, the other musketeers are fencing and practicing and bragging and hanging around looking cool. And all eyes are on these three as they're being led in by the page. Like, why are you here? What's going on? Is there a chance for action? Can we get involved? This kind of thing. And they have to play it cool. And kind of Brise-Coeur, thanks to the way that Ubiquity works, is kind of able to help everybody schmooze their way across, drawing attention, but not the kind of attention that they don't want. And in they go, and they have their meeting, in which they learn that they need to find this messenger that I mentioned at the beginning of the recap. And They feel they can handle this. They like the young man. There's no real problem. Let's do this. And then, shockingly, they're given a bag of money. Their salary. They'll be able to handle this mission, because the King's Musketeers often spend their time unpaid. The payment rates are somewhat random, and this is another thing that the Cardinal's Guard kind of lord over them, is they're more regularly paid. So they've got this bag of money. They can take care of their debts. They can maybe, buy some food, get some new clothes. It's a wonderful day. All they have to do is find this messenger who disappeared. But all they know about this messenger, his plans, is that he was going to go to confession first. They have to go to his chapel. Now, they know where this chapel is. So they hook up with their lackeys, and in All for One and in Leagues of Adventure, all the characters, as an expression of character design, have a helper. It's a henchman in Leagues of Adventure. It's a lackey in All for One. And this is something that's drawn right from the source material. If you have read The Three Musketeers by Dumas, there's an interesting scene where D'Artagnan is being set up by the Three Musketeers, and they recognize that he doesn't have a lackey, and they're shocked, like, "Oh, what's wrong with you?" So you absolutely must have one, and so they set him up with his. So what makes this kind of fun in All for One is that the lackey is an extension of your character. They have skills maybe that you don't, and they can handle the things that you as a musketeer are not interested in, whatever that might be. But they're played by one of the other people in the group. So you never have to have this conversation with yourself, and you don't have to treat it just like a pawn, like, I'll have my lackey go do that. You have to interact with them. And so we have some scenes with our lackeys as we're making our way to the church. So we'll talk about the lackeys later on. They didn't play as big a role in the session as I had hoped, because the players made a very good decision. If they were going to get where they were going in enough time to have a real chance for making an effect, they couldn't take the lackeys. The lackeys weren't able to ride fast enough to make that happen, so they left them behind, which is a smart decision, kind of sad for the role-playing opportunities. But they'll catch up, because my single session is now 2 sessions. So they go to the church and immediately begin to notice strange things. It's a very, very small church, but someone has had to have been giving big donations, because it has intact and very colorful, very well-maintained stained glass. But once they get inside and can look at the stained glass, they're a little taken aback, because among the many colorful images, there's a very militant Christ wearing a big breastplate. And there are dark suggestions in the background of these windows of this hunting creature, almost wolf-like in appearance. Now, this is the final of 3 triggers that I planted in events. Our opening scene is a hook directly to Brice Cour's character as he was described to me, a womanizer. And I wanted to get that out of the way to kind of set a light and atmospheric tone. So we have that scene. And then what are the Musketeers going to do? They can go with the page and report for duty, or because it really technically is still their day off, they can just wander around Paris. It's completely up to them. They went with the page because they are loyal. I like that. The opportunity for a duel, this is in there kind of as a hook to the impetuous nature of Philippe, who's described as young, still trying to prove himself, still trying to find himself. Maybe he'll go for this duel with the Cardinal's Guard. Maybe that will be fun and interesting. But they sensibly back away from that. And interestingly, this particular hook proved to be, I think, more interesting for Jean-Marie, who has kind of this simmering anger underneath the surface or something. But so the third and final hook is for our monster hunter, who is specifically interested in werewolves. So this is my signal to Seb that part of his character had been noted, and maybe this session would in some way be about shapeshifters or lycanthropes, or particularly werewolves. So inside is there's no pews, there's no seats, there's nothing. There's just a confessional, an open stone room, the altar, some candles, some votive candles by the door, the font for holy water, and a very, very old priest. And after some quick interaction, he guides them down under the church to an almost secret chamber where, of course, there's bones of famous or sainted people, and a wall with deep gouges carved in it like claws and iron manacles deeply embedded in the wall, but they are empty. And the priest tells them the story of how the young messenger's brother had been kept here for many, many months for his own protection because he's suffering from a terrible curse. And the priest, an old friend of the family, doesn't want him to suffer the terrible fate of killing while in the grip of this curse. So this has Jean-Marie very activated, and I was hoping that this could be some kind of twist, some kind of conflict that would engage all of the players. They know Jean-Marie as a monster hunter, is set on destroying Satan's beasts on Earth, and yet maybe there's more to this here. And the presence of the supernatural is something that, the way we were kind of framing the scenario, soldiers don't talk about the horrors they face with regular folk. And so here we have it, kind of bald in their face. There is a werewolf, but they're also, in some ways, a person, someone cursed and afflicted. Should they be put down, or is there something more that can be done? So they know they need to get to the small town of Stull, and by normal means this would take them a long time. They would have to take care of their horses, and even traveling at speed, there'd have to be long rest breaks, and they might not get there until sometime late the next day, or maybe even the morning of the day after that. But because they are king's men, because they are the elite musketeers, they could requisition messengers' horses, and they could switch horses at every rest break and make the journey and arrive late that very same night. And this is what they decide to do. And as they're discussing their plans, Briscourt hands his sword to his lackey and says, "Go, sharpen this," preparing himself emotionally for what might be ahead. The lackey goes outside, and they finish their discussion with the priest, and at a more leisurely pace, they make their way out of the basement of the chapel up to the main room of the chapel, and look at the stained glass one more time, then make their way outside for their final preparations. They're going to be leaving from this point. And this is where, because of the genre, because of the amount of time that it has been, and because of how obvious they are in their musketeer uniforms, Henri, one of the Cardinal's captains from the opening scene, with his allies, stumbles across the musketeers one more time. He's tracked them to this place. So, will we have a duel? He's challenging them. And as I describe the scene, I mean, everyone's familiar with Henri already, so I just have to re-present that character. But now he's with his close friends in the Cardinal's Guard. And, they're dressed in their bright crimson cloaks, and they look perfect. And then I describe one of the characters as having perfect hair, just to see what will happen, really, and to make a laugh. But Francois latches onto this. He goes, "What?" And he asks for some description of this guy, so I describe how well dressed he is. And rather than engaging in a duel, because the other two draw their swords and swordplay commences, and it's just on the edge of lethal. Both groups are capable swordsmen, so you have to push just a little bit in order to overcome your enemy. But do you really want to kill them? So it's an interesting choice. Which way is this swashbuckling going to go? And are these minions, or are these rivals? Who knows? But in the midst of all this swordplay, Briscourt and this Cardinal's Guard with perfect hair, they kind of move through the melee, and they're like, who does your hair? And they're having this discussion about fashion while the blood and blades are flying. And remember, Briscoe doesn't have his blade, so they're in the midst of this melee. He has nothing with which to defend himself except his words. And then when the dust settles and the Cardinal's guards have been soundly defeated, although one of our musketeers has taken a wound, well, they hop on their horses and they get ready to ride. They send their lackeys off with various missions in Paris to ensure that everybody knows where they're going and what they're doing, and they're off. And they make the fast journey to Stull, where nothing really threatens them except exhaustion. So young Philippe arrives fresh, and Jean-Marie arrives a little tired, and Briscoe, well, he had a very busy night, and so he's pretty tired by the time they get where they're going. And they find an inn. Now, the town of Stull is very, very small and very, very quiet. But they find an inn and they ride up to it. Their horses making loud noise on the cobblestones. And so the innkeeper sticks his head out the window and recognizes the stylish cloaks of the musketeers, and he ushers them in. He sends his young boy out to deal with their horses, and he invites them in. There's food available, and they receive hero's welcome as they merit being part of this elite unit. And the questions begin: where, do you know of these two brothers? And they do. And do you know, because the priest had warned them of the intervention of a family, the Martel family, who is well known in Stull. And maybe some of the black history of this family is true, and maybe they are in some way involved with this curse or with the abduction, because we still don't know. Did the young man free his brother from chains? But why would he do that on a night when the moon is becoming full? Or were they both abducted, or there's something else entirely going on? We simply don't know. And so they eat, recharge, they rest, they meet the family. They have a touching scene where the family recognizes where they're going to go and wants to give them silver crosses to protect them from, the black Martels. It's great. And there's some funniness and some tenderness. The young daughter takes an instant liking to Philippe and wishes him well. So I'd like to try and share just a little bit of what the session was like with part of the recording that worked. As you can tell, it was pretty funny. I was really enjoying myself. So just a second here.
All right. At my fullest right now. I do not want to run from this town. Please stay away from the innkeeper's wife, at least for one night. Yeah, I'd like to take the bag of coins, give Briscoe and Philip their due. I'm going to pay them basically. Then I'm going to leave the whole bag to the innkeeper with the best wishes from their king.
Wow.
And I'll just mention that we are going to visit the Martels, and things might get ugly. So,
well, the blood drains from the innkeeper's wife's face at the mention that you're going to visit the Martels, and she starts to pray, right? And he grips her firmly to comfort her, and he says, "I understand. You are the king's musketeers."
Yes, we are. I take my hat and I leave.
Listen, before you go,
I went to the lady. I stopped dramatically in the doorway.
And he mutters something to the young daughter that came out to talk to Philippe. And he just says, get me the something. It's hard to say. She runs off. You hear a chest lid open. And she comes out, and in her hand, she's holding heavy silver crosses that you would wear on a chain around your neck. And the family wants you to take them with you.
I take one from her and kiss her on the forehead and pat her on the head.
She giggles. The innkeeper says, "Bring them back to us alive."
Of course, Jean-Marie already had one of his own, but our three musketeers now are protected by silver, and despite their fatigue, are bolstered by this show of loyalty from the family, and they head out to the Martel mansion. Our heroes present themselves as very brave and very courageous, and they arrange with the innkeeper to change horses, and they use those horses to make their way out to the Martel estate. And our occultist, our monster hunter, Jean-Marie, is doing the mental calculations in his head, and he recognizes that on horseback they should arrive where people say the Martel estate is at midnight. Does this bode ill or well? Who can say? So when they get there, there's a massive gate. There's two guards, both sleeping. They've got wine. And without wasting any time on them, Jean-Marie just simply walks up and cracks their head together. And again, Ubiquity working as it does, we can dispense of this with just a glance at the character statistics. It doesn't have to go to a roll or anything. And so these two are out cold. Philippe takes the wine and the keys, and into the estate they creep. And as they're coming up to the manor house, the big fat harvest moon is hanging over. It's not quite full, but it's getting there. And the land rises up behind the manor house. There's a large decorative maze about waist high, which then blends into the base of this hill. But then going up the hill, it's all forested, and near the top of the hill, they can see the glint of a large fire, like a bonfire. So, getting their muskets ready, they creep through the undergrowth, trying to be quiet, and they come upon a ring of misshapen stones at the very top of this hill. And inside the clearing, there's men and women and children in these dark hooded cloaks, and they're dancing and chanting as they make their way around the bonfire and the stones. And chained to the stones are figures, and in the middle of the bonfire is another cloaked figure, the gold necklace. He seems to be unharmed by the fire. On the inside of the stone, facing the fire, they can see the messenger chained. On another stone, they can see the brother chained. The third stone has its back to them and is providing cover for the lead cultist standing in the bonfire. They creep through, and they are the king's musketeers. They're on a mission. What else can be done? So Jean-Marie takes out his musket. He's going to snipe, and he takes Briscoeur's musket, and Briscoeur heads out into the light to disrupt events. Shots are fired. The main cultist is hit. The other cultists scatter into the night, some of them wanting to fight, some of them just fleeing. There's, again, there's children and women among them. There's chaos. And Philippe makes his way into the clearing as well. So now our session is running out of time. Several of us have to go. We've lost over an hour getting ready, so it's time to build up to a cliffhanger. We established that we're going to play another scene and whatnot. So Philippe has run out. Briscoeur has run out. Jean-Marie has dropped a cultist. He's wounded the lead cultist. And Briscoeur recognizes that there's 7 just cultists arrayed against him. With their daggers. He might be able to handle them at his best, but maybe not now, and he's tired and it's late. And so he convinces them that he is just the leading edge of a massive number of musketeers. Like the hills are alive with musketeers. They buy it. And not only that, he tucks in on the end, I'm here with an elite troop of musketeers, and I am their favorite one, so you better not hurt me. So that's pretty funny. And in that dramatic moment, Philippe comes charging in to do battle. And Briscoe, who's standing in front of the lead cultist, who's still standing in the bonfire, he sees the golden chain and the key on it, and correctly surmises that the key is to the chains which are holding the victims to the ceremonial stones around the fire, and so he wants to snag it with his blade. So that's all very dramatic. And then Philippe charges into the fire, crashing in, and the flames erupt around them. And that's where I close the session, to be picked up again next time. So I hope you've enjoyed this recap. I hope you've gotten at least a sense of how much fun we had, how much laughter there was. We tried to keep everything fast-paced. Hangouts has that slight problem where it's unlike the table. When two people are speaking at the same time, it's hard to discern what's being said. So there was, a lot of use of the small camera at the bottom, I think, to make sure that you weren't going to step over what someone else was saying. So it had a nice feel to it. Often a Hangout session will leave me kind of tired and fatigued as I'm trying to push through the screen to reach the other side. But it seemed like everybody was kind of in the mood for swashbuckling, looking for that kind of high adventure, high tension, kind of semi-romantic fantasy tale. And that's pretty much what we got. So I'm looking forward to the next session when the end can be revealed and we can prepare for the next person to take on the duty and bring All for One to life in their way. So stay tuned for more on this very fun experiment and opportunity to play.